Hello and welcome to Doubles and Trebles. We're here tonight to preview week number 3 of the Premier League. Now, I've got two apologies to make, Pie Man, this evening. The first apology is to the subscribers out there. We didn't preview weeks 1 and 2. I'm not going to give you the excuses. It didn't happen, but we're back for week 3 and the upcoming weeks. And the second apology is in regards to Pie Man's mood in the next 10 or 12 minutes because Carlisle, his beloved Carlisle, are losing 4-0 at half time to Mansfield this evening at home. So he's fuming about that. But we're going to give him a minute to settle in while I whittle on for a moment or two. Week 3 in Glasgow. There's the fixtures on the screens there. We did miss weeks 1 and 2, so a very, very quick recap. Chris Dobie was the last man in the Premier League, and he was the first one out the traps. Just 4 days after he was confirmed as being a runner in the Premier League, he went and won the first event of the year. Straight out the blocks. 170 finish in one of his earlier games, 160 finish to win it in a decider against MVG. Chris Dobie well and truly makes his mark in week 1, and in week 2 we went to Cardiff, where there was two Welsh. They had a 25% chance of winning it, and Gerwyn Price did go on to win it. He looked out of sorts early doors, as he did in week 1, but he came through, somehow managed to beat Van Gerwen in the second round, averaging 96 versus a 110 from Van Gerwen. I do not know what happened there. And then he went on to win the final as well. So Gezi was happy. He spent the weekend in Scotland, Gezi, watching Wales instead of playing on the Pro Tours 1 and 2. He was in Scotland watching the rugby, and he probably stayed there because we're in Glasgow this week with the 4 fixtures you see on the screen there. I'll shut up now, Pie Man, and I'll hand over to you. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good on a darting front, at least. Enjoyed the Pro Tour over the weekend. Been enjoying the Premier League. I must say I've been distracted with the World Seniors. Thoroughly enjoyed that event.
33-1 finalist, was it, for the viewers?
Yeah, Richie Howson, 33-1, maybe not quite. No, that was my other pick, Mark Dudbridge. He fell to Kevin Painter at the quarters, unfortunately. But no, Richie Howson was our main selection, 16-1. Unfortunately, runner up to the irrepressible Robert Thornton, who had looked a little bit shaky in recent times on the Modus Super Series, but clearly just saves his best for the Seniors Tour. Absolutely loves it. Won 3 of the 4 events, so fair play to the Thorn. Back on to more pressing matters in the Premier League. Nicely summarised with the first 2 weeks. Yeah, Gezi Price winning last week. Not an event he traditionally likes, this Premier League, is it? But really nice for Price to have a Cardiff crowd behind him. I thought I couldn't help but root for him with the crowd. You could just see he did not know how to handle it with people actually cheering for him. And like you say, a very shaky start. Fortunate to get past Chris Dobie, I would say. The MVG game was a classic case of one player, doing everything right, but just some really good timing, I thought, from Price, like at the key moments. And the last leg, he looked dead and buried. I think he hit a 180 to leave 167, although he didn't take out the 167, and MVG, missed a couple of match starts. His response in that last leg was brilliant because he was dead and buried. He was 300 points behind, and he still managed to win it somehow. I remember I messaged you last Thursday saying that I was surprised to see Nathan Aspinall 11-8 for the final, given the 2 performances he'd put in there. You can see them in front of your screen: 105.22 and 105.30. So 2 sensational performances. Couldn't match that in the final, unfortunately, for Aspinall, and Price a worthy winner. Really looking forward to this week. I think what we have to deduce from the first 2 weeks is that Chris Dobie and Gerwyn Price winning, so hard to draw any sort of firm conclusions at this point in terms of a pattern or likeliest winners. My main conclusion is that while Van Gerwen has looked extremely consistent, there's no reason why you can't be looking at the bottom end of the market when it comes to on the night winners, as Price and Dobie have shown.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got the on the night winners. There's some bigger prices there. Dobie would have been a double figure price the week he won it. So yeah, this is how the draw looks this week. With those brackets there. As I always say about the Premier League, really difficult for me from a betting point of view. Although I do much prefer this format from a betting point of view because there is no draw element. We'll just have a quick run through the games in order as we see there, Pineman. Aspinall, Van Gerwen, first game. Van Gerwen, as you would expect, favourite, just a smidge over 1-2, and you can get just a smidge over 2-1. Aspinall, I think Aspinall he showed good form last week, really good form. I think he's got a chance there, and if he was just backing in a 2-horse race there, Van Gerwen didn't put up any trees at the Players' Tour Championship over the weekend. Went out round 1 on day 1. Aspinall had a couple of good runs. I'd be with Aspinall at 2-1.
Yeah, Van Gerwen beat by Gaten Hedges and Brendan Dolan at the weekend, so nothing to particularly fear. We do have to give him credit, though. He's been the most consistent of the 8 so far across the 2 weeks, hitting really good levels and generally, when he has lost his games, as we saw with Gerwyn Price, it's been, a very narrow defeat. He lost 6-5 in the final to Chris Dobey as well. So, he's not doing a lot wrong, Van Gerwen, but Nathan Aspinall on the form of last week, the one player that you wouldn't really want to face. If Aspinall can find those levels again, then I'd be extremely bullish about his chances. Only thing I would say is he didn't really kick on at the Players' Championship. I was keen to keep an eye on how he performed this weekend, and he lost the last leg shootout in one of them. But no, ultimately a bit of a disappointing weekend for the Asp. But let's see if he can bring that form from last week. He'll have a real chance of beating Van Gerwen here.
I know we're only going on 2 weeks' evidence so far. I think they're the two informed players in this tournament thus far. I know that Gerwyn Price won last week. I'm going to come on to him in a minute. I've got some strongish comments to make. On to game 2. Peter Wright and against Dimitri Van den Bergh, always a strange game for me whenever they play. Best of friends, maybe best of enemies as well. Yeah, 7-5 Dimitri, who I don't think should be in the Premier League full stop, against around the 4-7-ish Peter Wright in this one.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're judging them on the Premier League form, it's a difficult one to call. Peter Wright losing both of his games thus far. Losing to Chris Dobey and Nathan Aspinall. But as we said, Nathan Aspinall was virtually untouchable last week in that particular game. So Wright not doing an awful lot wrong. Meanwhile, Dimitri's two of his 3 games have been losses to Van Gerwen. He did beat Johnny Clayton in a really good quarter-final on night 1. So a hard one to assess. I'm always inclined to lean with Wright, as you said, just because of the dynamic between these two. I do sometimes feel that, Wright, for anyone that doesn't know, had Dimitri living in with him for a period, and they practiced together. And Dimitri looks at him as a kind of mentor. And I know Dimitri had a couple of wins over him, but they have had a couple of spats as well. And I feel like Dimitri maybe sort of can't quite relax against Peter right now. They've had a little bit of edge, a little bit of needle, and he made it clear that he doesn't want to disrespect or fall out with Peter Wright. I fancy Peter Wright to prevail from that game, actually. And I did like some of the signs I saw from him last week, despite his defeat to Aspinall. I thought it was, there was a couple of small signs of Wright maybe refinding his better dart after a slow start to the year.
I agree. I do agree with you there. I think Snake will win. Not much of a betting prospect, but maybe one for the outright pie man. If he can get on a little bit of a run, 5-1, he is there to win this night 3. On to Gerwyn Price against the world champion Michael Smith. We all know what happened with Gerwyn Price at the Worlds. He looked completely disinterested in week 1 of this Premier League, and he has a hate-hate relationship thus far with the Premier League generally in terms of his performance in it over the years. And then last week, I'm watching his first game last week against Chris Dobey on home soil. He was behind. He had to come from behind. And I thought he looked disinterested again. I said last July in a punchy statement that Gerwyn Price will never win a major again. And after what's happened at Christmas and threats of retirement or not playing in certain tournaments, Ali Pali, going at the weekend to the rugby instead of Players' Championships 1 and 2. Will he be at Players' Championships 3 and 4 this weekend? God only knows.
I doubt it.
But he just didn't look interested to me. Even last week, he won against Dobey, almost fell over the line there. He got a little bit lucky with his good timing against Van Gerwen, and then the crowd carried him home in the final, in my opinion. I'd be with Michael Smith all day long here. He's 10-11 Smith, 21-20 Price. A very close game, the closest of the 3 we've previewed so far. I'm all in Michael Smith.
I am as well, albeit for slightly different reasons. I'm not quite as negative on Price as you just were there, although I do understand the sentiment that you've given. I think, yes, if he lost that first round game to Dobey, as he could have quite easily done last week, then we'd be sat here kind of questioning his attitude, questioning his participation. I think it then would have looked even worse if he didn't turn up to Players' Championship 1 and 2 off the back of a first round exit. So it's certainly fine margins. Price has made his thoughts on this tournament as a whole fairly clear. Obviously, they'll be delighted to win in Cardiff for the Welsh fans because he is a big patriot. But whether he's that bothered about how he gets on in the Premier League is another matter entirely. Michael Smith, on the other hand, is a classic case of results haven't quite gone his way in weeks 1 and 2, but I've not seen much to concern me in terms of his performance levels. He hasn't been getting hammered. He's still been averaging, up around the high 90s, generally speaking. So, yeah, look, I'm quite keen to take Michael Smith here at 10-11. I think Price skipping Players Championship 1 and 2 plus any kind of he may have took his foot off the gas a little bit after winning in Wales and thought, right, that's it. I've made my sort of point now. I can have a little bit of a relax and go off to the rugby and stuff. Whereas I think Michael Smith, world champion, he's going to be absolutely desperate for a good run here, isn't he? So yeah, Smith 10-11 certainly appeals to me as well.
He'll be back to being booed as well in Scotland. I've got pretty much no doubts about that. Because how do you say it? Slightly controversial, but Peter Wright is, in my opinion, Scottish by passport only. So yeah, they need someone to get behind, and that's going to be in a negative manner behind Gerwyn Price. On to the final game of the first round, another coin toss type game, just shading favouritism at the moment. Johnny Clayton, again, lost in the first round last week with that home crowd. Probably shouldn't have done it, in all honesty. He'll be disappointed with that. He got off to a good start against Smith and went downhill badly. And Dobie, after his first week, only played one game last week as well. So, yeah, another close game to finish out the final 8.
Yeah, this one, an interesting dynamic, because I think in terms of actual darts being thrown, there's not a lot between these two at the moment. However, I just wonder whether the mental side of it's going to start to play a part here, where we're at week 3. Chris Dobie's already enjoying a bit of a dream start to life in the Premier League. I mean, we've seen it with Clayton and Cullen in previous years, where they're just kind of pleased to be there and they end up riding this wave and holding a fearlessness. And that win on night 1 was, that'll be a career-long memory for Chris Dobie. Yeah. He fully deserved it, and he had some brilliant checkouts along the way, as you referenced earlier. So, for him to go into this match with Johnny Clayton, he'll be feeling confidence sky high. Johnny Clayton, on the other hand, just, it's very early to be getting concerned, but I've seen Clayton talk about this transition from, finally giving up his job at the local council and becoming full-time darts. And he always used to reference how darts was still an enjoyable hobby for him when he was working. And I just wonder now whether, now he's made this jump, whether it's starting to become a little bit like he feels like he needs to win. And when you see yourself starting no one's getting cut away at the bottom here. Let's get it right. If Clayton wins this night, he'll be up towards the top 2 in the table. It's only week 3 after all. However, when I look at Johnny Clayton 17-2 to win the night and Chris Dobie 11-1 to win the night, just on confidence alone, I would much rather be with Dobie at 11-1. I don't know if that is the way I would play it, but I would probably play Dobie on the match betting, just purely on a confidence play. However, I must say my best bet of the lot is Michael Smith to beat Gerwyn Price.
Yeah, I would prefer to back Dobie over Clayton, but I wouldn't be quite as strong as you. I'm all in Smith. I think Smith will beat Gerwyn Price, and I'll be having a go on the 4-1. They might be a little bit bigger when the odds become available. Recording on Tuesday night here. So yeah, that's where I'll be going on the night. Pyman, where's your money going on to win night 3 in Glasgow?
I'd be very tempted, and I don't have much rhyme or reason for this, but I've just got a feeling Peter Wright is due a win on the night. Like I said, there's a couple of things I saw at the Players' Championship over the weekend with Wright, where he was in a really, really good game with Keegan Brown at one point, where they were both sort of chucking 110 average at each other after 6 legs, and Wright eventually prevailing in that one. And we've seen it time and time again with Peter Wright over his career, where he can, maybe. Not normally at the very start of the year, but when you get about 6 or 8 weeks in, he has a little purple patch where he wins 2 or 3 events in a row playing, darts from another planet, and everyone thinks, oh my Lord, Peter Wright, what is he on? And then he'll just as quickly he'll go cold again for a long period. I just wonder if we're teetering on the edge of a hot streak for him here. And that Dimitri Van den Bergh game, as I say, I think plays into his hands in the opener. So yeah, I think Wright will be my likeliest winner at 5-1. And Michael, I also expect a strong week from Michael Smith. So if I was going for a fun bet, I'd maybe name the finalists with Peter Wright and Michael Smith. I don't know if we'll get a price on that this early in the week. You may well do with the suppliers in front of us here. There you go, name the finalists. 15-2. That'd do me for a little fun one.
Hey, I do like it, Pyman. Although, look, there's only 1 point difference between them. Wright at 5-1 or Smith at 4-1. I know who I would rather be in terms of the draw, because look who Mr. Wright's got to play. I've already identified those 2 gentlemen, Aspinall and Van Gerwen, as the informed players in this tournament so far. So I'd be with Michael Smith at 4-1.
And it's not like me, but I have just, I like to justify and reason myself. But I just got a bit of a sneaky feeling Peter Wright is due a win, and I think this is a tournament where sometimes that does happen over this long 16-week grueling format. Sometimes a player is just showing the signs that they're going to string 3 wins together. And yeah, Peter Wright, I've got a feeling for Peter Wright this week.
Well, Pieman, we'll be back next week, and one of us will be wrong. At least one of us, possibly both.
Probably
So
both. Probably both.
Tune in again next week. Plenty of Premier League action to follow on the channel, and maybe some Players' Championship updates as well. So make sure you give us a like and subscribe, and we'll speak to you soon.